I often think about that cold autumn morning when I first drove into Millerton, Montana, not knowing that what I was about to discover would haunt me for the rest of my life. My name is Daniel Cooper, and I was just a local reporter for the Helena Gazette back then. October 12th, 1963. That date is seared into my memory like a brand. I remember how the fog hung low over the pines as I followed the winding road into what should have been a sleepy mountain town with 217 people. Instead, I found something that defies explanation to this day, a place where an entire community simply ceased to exist overnight. The assignment seemed routine at first. My editor had received calls about missed deliveries to Millerton, mail piling up, scheduled shipments left untouched at the town's small general store, probably just some phone lines down or a road closure we haven't heard about, he'd said, tossing me the keys to the company car. Go check it out. Might make a decent human interest piece. I'd never been to Millerton before, though I had heard stories. It was one of those insular communities tucked away in the mountains where families lived for generations, largely keeping to themselves. The town's only claim to fame was its proximity to the vast Blackwater Cavern system, one of the largest unexplored cave networks in North America. As I rounded the final bend in the road, I expected to see the usual signs of small-town life. Smoke from the chimneys, people walking along the main street, maybe children playing outside the schoolhouse. Instead, I was greeted by perfect stillness, the kind of stillness that raises the hair on the back of your neck because it feels fundamentally wrong. I parked at what appeared to be the town's center. No one came to greet me or even look curiously at the unfamiliar vehicle. Store signs swung gently in the breeze, doors closed but unlocked upon further inspection. The silence was absolute except for the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of a sign. "Hello," I called out, my voice shattering the unnatural quiet. "Anyone here?" No response. That's when I noticed something peculiar. A car was parked outside the general store, driver's door hanging open, keys still in the ignition. A shopping bag sat on the passenger seat, containing canned goods and what looked like a half-finished grocery list. I checked the engine. Cold. My journalistic instincts kicked in, and I began taking notes, snapping photos with my camera. Every store along the main street told the same story. Commerce interrupted mid-transaction. The diner had plates of half-eaten food, coffee cups still half full, now cold and filming over. The register was open, cash still inside. I remember thinking this must be some kind of a drill or town meeting I wasn't aware of. Perhaps everyone had gathered at the church or school for an emergency, but the church stood empty, hymnals open on the pews as if the congregation had vanished mid-worship. Even more disturbing, I noticed every single Bible was missing from the racks. It wasn't until I entered the small sheriff's office that the true dread began to set in. The radio was broadcasting static, a logbook open to October 11th with the final entry reading only, "They're coming from below, God help us." As I stared at those words, the radio suddenly cleared of static, and for just a moment I heard what sounded like singing. Distant, ethereal voices chanting words I couldn't understand. And then silence again. I almost left right then. Every instinct told me to get in my car and drive back to Helena as fast as possible, but I couldn't. 217 people don't just disappear without a trace. So instead, I methodically began checking homes. What I found only deepened the mystery. Each house looked like its occupants had left in a hurry, meals abandoned on tables, TVs left on to static, beds unmade. In one home, a bathtub was still full of water, now cold. In another, I found a child's homework, half completed, the pencil lying beside it as if dropped mid-sentence. But it was Mrs. Ethel Blackwood's house that truly chilled me to the bone. Mrs. Blackwood, I would later learn, was Millerton's oldest resident at 92 years old and the town's unofficial historian. Her house was different from the others, not left in disorder, but meticulously organized. On her kitchen table lay an open journal, and beside it was a strange brass key unlike anything I'd ever seen before. The journal's final entry read, "They've been singing again, louder now. Martin says we should join them below, that they found something wonderful in the deep chambers. I don't trust it, but what choice do we have with what's coming? If anyone finds this, know that we chose our fate. The entrance is beneath the schoolhouse. Do not follow." I photographed the journal and pocketed the key, though I wasn't sure why. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying with it a faint sound, like distant voices calling from far away. I told myself it was just the wind in the pines. I keep saying I should have left then, but I should have left then. Called the state police and let them handle it. That would have been the sensible thing to do. Instead, I found myself walking toward the small schoolhouse at the edge of town, drawn by some compulsion I couldn't explain. The schoolhouse was like the other buildings, abandoned midday, arithmetic problems still on the blackboard, children's coats hanging on the hooks. But unlike the other buildings, there was something odd about the floor in the supply closet. It didn't match the rest of the hardwood. When I knelt down to examine it, I found a metal ring hidden under a stack of old textbooks. The brass key fit it perfectly. The trap door opened with surprising ease, revealing a steep staircase descending into darkness. I should have waited for help. I should have gone back to my car, driven to the nearest town with a telephone, and called the authorities. But the reporter in me couldn't resist. I had my flashlight, my camera, and a story unlike any other unfolding before me. The stairs went down for what felt like an eternity, the air growing colder and damper with each step. The walls were no longer manufactured, but carved from natural stone. I was entering the Blackwood Cavern system, but through an entrance that wasn't on any map I'd ever seen. When the stairs finally ended, I found myself in a large chamber with multiple tunnels branching off in different directions. The walls were covered in strange symbols that looked freshly painted, swirling patterns that seemed to move in the beam of my flashlight. In the center of the chamber stood a makeshift table, papers scattered across it. The papers contained calculations, star charts, and cryptic references to the Great Convergence and those who wait below. One document caught my eye. A government telegram dated October 10th, marked Urgent Top Secret. It warned of imminent nuclear strikes from Cuba, advising all citizens to seek shelter immediately. The Cuban Missile Crisis had been resolved peacefully the previous year in 1962. This telegram was either a fake or something much more disturbing. As I examined the documents, I heard it again, singing, coming from one of the tunnels, not distant this time, but clear enough that I could almost make out words in a language I didn't recognize, and beneath the singing, what sounded like hundreds of footsteps moving in unison. I doused my flashlight, immediately plunging myself into perfect darkness. The singing grew louder, and with it came a faint bluish glow from the leftmost tunnel. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering in my chest. They emerged into the chamber, the missing residents of Millerton, but they were changed. They walked in perfect synchronization, their movements fluid yet somehow wrong, like marionettes controlled by an unskilled puppeteer. Their eyes reflected the blue light, glazed and vacant. Men, women, and children, all moving as one, all singing that strange melody. In their midst walked a man who seemed different from the rest. Where they moved mechanically, he moved with purpose. Where their eyes were vacant, his were alight with fervor. He carried what looked like an ancient book bound in some material I couldn't identify. I recognized him from photos I'd seen in the town. Martin Crenshaw, the local science teacher who'd once been dismissed from a university position for his radical theories about what existed in the deepest cave systems. The procession moved through the chamber and into another tunnel, the singing fading as they disappeared from my view. I waited several minutes in the darkness, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. When I finally gathered the courage to turn my flashlight back on, I noticed something they'd left behind. A single piece of paper that had apparently fallen from Crenshaw's book. On it was a diagram of the cave system, far more extensive than any official survey had ever documented. And at the bottom, a notation. The deeper folk have shown me the way. When the stars align on October 25th, the door between worlds will open. We will transcend. October 25th, less than 2 weeks away. I should have fled then. Part of me wanted to, but I had to know more. Keeping my flashlight dimmed, I followed the tunnel they had disappeared into, staying far enough back that the blue glow was just barely visible ahead. The tunnel descended sharply, taking me deeper into the earth than I'd ever been. The air grew warmer rather than colder and carried a strange metallic smell. Occasionally, I heard snatches of that singing, now joined by other voices, deeper, resonating voices that seemed to vibrate through the stone itself. After what might have been an hour of careful progress, the tunnel opened into something I still struggle to describe. It wasn't a natural cavern. The space was vast, with a ceiling so high my flashlight couldn't reach it. The walls were perfectly smooth, carved with the same swirling symbols that I'd seen earlier, but these glowed with a faint blue light of their own. In the center of this impossible space stood what I can only describe as a structure, a massive stone doorway, oval in shape, standing alone without any wall around it. The townspeople had gathered before it, still singing, still moving in that unnatural unison. Martin Crenshaw stood with his arms raised, the book open before him, and through the doorway I saw stars. Not a reflection or a painting, but actual stars, though we were deep, deep underground. Stars in configurations I didn't recognize, moving in ways stars shouldn't move. I must have gasped or made some sound, because suddenly, as one, the congregation turned. 217 pairs of glowing eyes fixed on me, and they smiled, every single one of them, the same empty smile. Martin Crenshaw spoke, his voice unnaturally amplified in the cavern. "You're just in time, reporter. Come, witness the salvation of Millerton. The stars have warned us of what's coming. Destruction from above. Nuclear fire raining down. But the deeper folk have offered us sanctuary. A new home away from the surface world's madness." I found my voice somehow. The Cuban Missile Crisis ended. There's no nuclear strikes coming. His smile widened. "That's what they want you to believe. We know the truth. We've always known. Ever since we found the first entrance to the deep chambers 50 years ago. The deep folk have been preparing us for this moment for generations." As if on cue, something began to emerge from the doorway. I caught only glimpses, elongated limbs, bodies that seemed to fold in impossible ways, faces with too many features arranged all wrong. The singing reached a crescendo. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I turned and ran as fast as I could through the tunnels, miraculously finding my way back to the chamber with the stairs. Behind me, I heard not pursuit, but laughter, echoing, distorted laughter that seemed to come from the stone itself. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. Dawn was breaking as I sped away from Millerton, my hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. I drove straight to the state police headquarters in Helena, babbling my story to increasingly skeptical officers. They sent a team to Millerton the next day. I insisted on accompanying them, though every fiber of my being screamed against returning. What we found was nothing. Not nothing unusual, but literally nothing. Where Millerton had stood was now just empty forest, as if the town had never existed at all. No buildings, no roads, not even foundations or rubble, just trees that looked like they'd been growing undisturbed for decades. The police thought I was crazy or playing an elaborate prank. My editor was more sympathetic but equally disbelieving. The final blow came when I tried to develop my photographs. Every single frame was blank, pure black, as if no light had ever touched the film. I would have doubted my own sanity, except for 3 things. The brass key I still had in my pocket, the single page of Martin Crenshaw's diagram that I'd taken, and most convincing of all, Millerton's complete absence from every map and government record when I checked afterward. Not listed as abandoned or relocated, but completely erased as if it had never been there at all. That was 60 years ago. I've spent my life researching what happened, finding fragments of truth in obscure historical records, and the occasional testimony of hikers or cavers who've had strange experiences near where Millerton should have been. Some report hearing singing coming from the earth. Others described feeling watched by something they can't see. A few have disappeared entirely. The brass key sits on my desk as I write this, a constant reminder that I didn't imagine what I saw, and Martin Crenshaw's diagram has become my obsession. Over the decades, I've identified 7 other small towns across America with histories similar to Millerton, communities with unusual access to cave systems, reports of strange behaviors, and then sudden, complete disappearances with all records of their existence mysteriously erased afterwards. I believe they're all connected, doorways to somewhere else, opened by those who dwell deeper than we're meant to go, and I believe Martin Crenshaw was both right and wrong. There was no nuclear apocalypse coming in 1963, but something else is coming. The diagram contains astronomical calculations pointing to another great convergence due to occur soon, very soon. I'm an old man now, with terminal cancer, giving me perhaps 3 months to live. I have nothing left to lose by sharing this story. If you're reading this, be watchful of small, isolated towns near cave systems. Listen for singing where there should be none. And if you ever come across the symbols that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them, run. Run and don't look back. Because I've continued tracking the patterns, and I've identified the next likely location for a doorway to open. The town is called Pine Haven. It's a small community in Oregon, built above an extensive but largely unmapped cave system, and yesterday I received an email from a concerned relative of a Pine Haven resident. Apparently, the entire town has become obsessed with an amateur astronomer's prediction of a meteor strike. They're preparing for something, making preparations to go somewhere safe. I've sent this account to every newspaper, police department, and government agency I can think of. None have responded. I've posted it online, only to find my accounts mysteriously deleted within hours. This is my last attempt to warn anyone who will listen. The convergence date is October 17th, 2023. Tomorrow. Editor's note: this manuscript was found amongst the belongings of retired journalist Daniel Cooper after his disappearance on October 16th, 2023. Cooper, aged 83, was last seen purchasing hiking equipment and cave exploration gear despite his advanced age and poor health. Local authorities conducted a brief search but found no trace of him. His case remains open but inactive due to lack of leads. The brass key and diagram mentioned in the manuscript were not found among his possessions. Thanks for listening to another of my Dark Veil Tales. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more, be sure to click the story linked here or others in my video section. And if you're so inclined, like or subscribe to my channel. It will definitely be appreciated. Have a frightfully fantastic day.